2019, the rest of the story. July 2019, macOS Catalina and iOS 13.
I wanted to welcome Jimmy Obomsawin back to the pod. Can everyone please?
Catalina, watchOS 6, as well as some information from Mac Rumors, which gets a little bit more in depth into the specifics of all the changes. Sure, you've all heard about iOS 13 that's coming out. There are a lot of new features, especially in iOS 13. Catalina has some new stuff, but mostly it's changes related to security. Through this demo here today, I just wanted to show you some of my favorite new features. Some of this stuff, if you watched Apple's keynote, you've probably seen already, but I'm going to try to slow down on the features that I think you all are going to enjoy the most. I mean, it's too soon to tell, but so far in the beta process, this software seems to be a little bit more stable than previous year's releases. Beta is dark mode. Dark mode seems kind of superfluous, or seems sort of just aesthetic. It can be some, but what dark mode is, let me go in, and you see instead of having everything being white, black on white, it's white on black. You know, as they say, that the blue light is not good for you at nighttime, and this really cuts down on that. The other big thing they've been talking about is the new Reminders app. And I can't really go into it too much because even though I'm running the new software, I'm not running the new back-end format. But it's not a huge difference. They're talking about it like it is a huge difference. It's cosmetically very different. They give you a lot more options, like different colors and backgrounds and images you can stick in there. But the big thing is you can now have indented like sub-tasks underneath of other tasks. There's add people. And you can choose people who are iCloud users, and they get not just a copy, it's a linked file. So it's really very similar to Apple TV, just with a touch screen and very specialized. Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
August 2019, privacy and smart home devices.
Without further ado then, Vivian, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Larry, for the introduction related to the concerns that users have and how we can translate. And we can think about privacy as mathematical formula too, right? How do we quantify privacy, right? Translating these concerns of the users into some algorithms and rules that will allow us to protect information in a consistent way. Teams emerge, 14 specifically, right? So we look at how, where, why, and who. So when people discuss privacy, a set of objects is an emerging technology that provides to consumers and to end users convenient features. You can think about Google Home, Amazon Echo as intelligent personal assistants that provide information, resources, and services for the end user. Right? So you can ask a question, idea, how many of you have a smart home device at your place now? Can you? Okay, so half of the room, right? But on the other hand, we also have several risks associated to this device. For designers and developers, researchers, it's still unclear what exactly these risks are. And we have several challenges associated to the creation of this privacy-preserving controls, right? They should advocate for data protection. They should provide better controls and user interfaces.
Vivian, you have just opened our eyes about the layers of complexity involved in this and helped us work out different ways of thinking about it. Thank you.
October 2019, WordPress sites for everyone.
Gary Vaughan is a State Department consultant who does technology consulting.
Hopefully that will be the goal here today, is we're going to talk a little bit generally about WordPress, and more specifically, we're going to talk about WordPress.com. you will be getting a taste of what the dashboard, so-called dashboard, looks like. A lot of this is about branding, either personally or professionally. You get into CSS with some of the upper-level versions of WordPress.com. The good thing is there's an upward path. So if you get into this and you say, hey, you know, either I want to learn more and do more, or I've learned enough, but I really need kind of some assistance, you can either, you can upgrade to a paid plan. A WordPress.org, which is the more complex, powerful version of software, it's very easy to migrate from a WordPress.com site to a .org site. Now, I put this together in just a few hours. Some themes are easier to work with than other themes. Some take a look. It's sort of an educational piece. This is kind of just a planning slide on how to, you know, a fair amount of work's involved. If you're migrating from an old site, that's something that's important in step 3, implementation. That's it.
This has been fabulous.
Great. Thanks
so much.
November 2019, Extended Reality Tools.
The build. This is a new space for George Mason that kind of came out of my office about 4 years ago. My boss dropped off a 3D printer and said, what can you do with this thing? And I've kind of blown this whole thing up from just that one printer. So the space now is a 3D centric space. It mainly focuses on 3D technologies. So 3D printing, 360 video, virtual reality, augmented reality, and photogrammetry, which is a, so we're a little separate. We do mostly 3D immersive technology, and our whole goal here is to really just turn faculty, staff, and students onto these technologies. So today I wanted to go through, I'm going to give a more formal lecture, I guess, in a few minutes. But I just wanted to sort of touch base with what I have set up today. So outside in the main club area is a Google Daydream low immersion VR headset. Go and kind of look at each station, and then we can meet back here and do our formal presentation. How's that sound? We could walk around to the stations, and I can just sort of show you what everything is. And then did we want to take a break before my presentation, or? Okay, yeah, so why don't we all move out to the build. Then if you come up, anywhere you see this small blip, this is how we post ours. There's a lot of magazines, newspapers, a lot of corporate companies are using Blipar here. So if you guys want to just come on in, there's more. So there's one for 3D. There's one for AR. Right. So if you go into Explore mode, you can actually just point it at anything, a thing of strawberries, and like Google Lens, it'll actually come up and give you information about what's the price of strawberries, where can you buy them, etc. So for example, if you had your app on and you walked past a Panera, you might get a ping, and you open your app, and all of a sudden it's augmented. It says, "Hey, today's special, come on in." So there's these. So most of it's Google Earth right now, or Google Maps is beta testing AR for visuals. You know, that you actually hold your phone up and you take a left, you take a right, go by, you know, just like you would see it on a 2D map. And that's pretty much what AR is. It's just augmenting our real world. And that's different from mixed reality, whereas mixed reality is using the objects in our real world so that what's augmented, the computer-generated things, can actually go behind space, right? So if you have an object, like you have a digital dog that you're augmenting, well, regular AR, you just see it in that space. So mixed reality is really where everybody's going. Next year, Facebook is coming out with their own AR glasses that is supposed to, what they did with the Oculus Quest, blow the market away with AR. But it's similar to that, and I'll show you what if you hold that little thing up right there, this guy. So that's a leap motion. It's basically a scanner, and it's scanning up in a V formation, right? So when you put your hands over it, it can actually see your hands. So, and then this is called photogrammetry. This is basically scanning using your phone. All we did was took pictures 360 degrees around. We sent it up to this program called Recap,
and then recap, looked at all of the images, right, the two-dimensional images, and based on all that, they could solve the algorithm could solve for the geometry, and then send us back a three-dimensional object. So it picked up a little bit of the table, but then we cleaned that up, right? Just sort of cleaned it up at the bottom real easily, and you can rotate this in the space, and then after that, if you take the shell off, you have a mesh CAD, so you can actually transform this any way you want, right? And then this is your solid. So this is what downloads as STL, and then this is what was printed. And we put the base on it. There's three things that help adhere it to the bed. Rafting, brims, and skirts. Sounds like we're sailing, right? So what happens is we actually lay down a layer of PVC, which is a type of, or a PVA glue, onto the glass plate. So that gives it that first layer that goes down, and it helps it adhere to the plate. And then also that first layer could be what's called a raft, right? And so on this print, you can see that it actually printed the raft. And so these plates, so this is a different kind of PLA, this is the plastic, and we use Kapton tape to actually help adhere to the glass plate, whereas these, we just use the glue. But on the bottom you see it lays down this thicker layer, and that's the raft. And that just helps it not only adhere to the bed, but it also helps with the bottom layer of the print, so it peels off, right? So what I tell students is if it has a large base, it doesn't need a raft. And so my student didn't listen to me last night when he printed a raft. And sometimes they're hard to get off. And then also once that raft is down there, it just helps adhere it. If it has a smaller base, then it does have the ability to tip over. So something like this, right? It's got a small area on the bottom, and so once it gets to these bigger areas, it could, push over, and that happens. So in something like this, we would definitely do a raft and a skirt, and the skirt actually pushes up, actually a brim, and the brim actually pushes up against the side of the wall, and that helps it sort of stay down like that. There's also support.
Does the Tinkercad actually give you advice about that?
No.
So
that's
how
the
would
key.
you know that? Is that just experience? Or?
So once you finish your 3D print, then you go into what's called a slicer. And the slicer is basically just instructions, the XYZ coordinates for the 3D printer to reproduce this.
Right.
So it looks at this object and reproduces it. Well, the trick is there's a button in the program where it says support, and the computer will figure out, aha, I need support here. And the way you know it needs support is anything over 2 inches. So if you look real close, you can start to see the layer kind of dipping down there because it had a hard time making it all the way across. So what's called bridging. And so like if you were printing me like this, there's nothing print can't support. So you got to you can pull the level down, and you can actually see every layer as it's being built. You can preview it. And so what I teach students is as they go up, look for these places where the printer is going to be in midair. If it's in midair, you need support. If it's not, then you don't need support. So believe it or not, this didn't need any support, and it made it all the way across.
Wow.
So if you look ahead, and then you can use these as sort of, if you click and point, you should be able to select some. There you go. So you can select some. So if you go turn to your left, now turn to your right. Okay, and then keep going a little more. Okay, now look up. Okay, so if you click on
Something just flew by.
that big sign right there, if you click library,
It looks like I'm pointing a laser right at it.
try clicking apps.
You fall down, you fail, so. That's right. Might say you lose before you.
Actually, look down. Okay, so
What are you looking at to know what I'm looking at?
I'm looking at the screen behind you, so it's mirror.
Basically just an overview. There's a lot of stuff in this content. Sorry about that. And it had this idea of creating a project for autistic kids to have an experience in a safe environment. And so what they did was they created a 360 video experience that was interactive. So they used a program called Unity and Vuforia. And none of these students had ever done 3D printing, 360 video, interactive coding or anything like this. So they were really starting at scratch. And they came in with the idea, and they kind of planned out how they were going to approach each one of these problems. So they learned 360 video production. They went to a Giant, and they filmed this scene where there was a person that works there and 2 customers. And so the experience was the student needed to find a specific Campbell soup or a specific product, and he needed to ask questions. And so for kids that are on the spectrum, asking the wrong person and getting someone yelling back at them might like really put them over the edge. So they wanted to have that experience of like how they could do that in a safe environment. So in the build, you guys kind of saw what we have. It's 3D printing, 360 video. We have our Leap Motion VR station. I also have some 360 fly cameras. They're actually not 360, they're 280. And these cameras can go on drones. And so basically it's just filming what's below the drone, because who wants to see the drone in the sky? And they can also go on tabletops, and if you were going to do like a meeting. So that's kind of cool. If you, on your iPhones, unfortunately I have it on the, well I do have it on my, on the iPad it's limited, because the only way you can use this tool on the iPad is you take a photograph first, and then you can apply Google Lens to it. And then the photograph will actually read whatever's on that image and give you information on it. On the iPhone, it should be, if you have the Google app, you should see Google Lens there. Or if you have Google Photos, you can also go in there live and click Google Lens, and it'll see it live. So you'll see the video, you'll use your camera, and what you can do is, it's like my Vans shoes. If I pointed it at it, it would know immediately those are Vans, and that's the logo, and it would bring up information on those exact shoes, where to buy them, how much they are, a website that I can go to. So Google Lens looks like this. You can get it from the App Store. It looks like that icon, and it will show up in if you download the Google app, it actually shows up there as a separate app. The Android, you can do it through Assistant. If you have the Google app, that's there. And then if you have Google Photos, you'll see there's an icon there. On the iPad, unfortunately, I have to actually go into my pictures. And so I can actually show you an example. So if I go into Google Photos, and I actually did my business card. So there's my business card, right? So instead of live view, I have to actually take a picture of it first. There's Google Photos. And if I click there, it's sensing it right now, and it actually brings up the information here. It knows that add contact, call, text, or email, and it's down here. It says Johnson Center, George Mason, Jim McLean 2, my phone number, where we are, and if there was a picture or anything else, it would bring up more. It'd probably bring up images. So like if you wanted to know what breed of dog that is, boom, it'll tell you immediately. Or what kind of plant that is, boom, it'll tell you immediately. So really, and Google Poly is kind of like all their sort of immersive tools. So Google Poly is a VR program, kind of like the Painter, the tilt brush, or like blocks, but this is creating more. These are creating more intricate objects that you can then bring into a virtual environment. I'm not a 3D coder or a CAD drawer, and I tried to learn how to use Maya. It's extremely, extremely hard, and it's a skill that you can lose easily. This kind of democratizes it. I know how to go in and put things together and make it look like, so it makes students be able to access these and then I can bring it into a 3D world. Originally she did 360 video, but then she switched to Google Tour because she thought this really solves my problem.
On your viewing screen, you will see a tiny small white dot which follows your head movement.
So in Cardboard, that's how you actually control it. There's a little clicker. So she's giving you instructions. And you notice how she didn't start talking till a couple minutes? That gives you, the viewer, he's like, where are you? And so it gives them a little sense to... So she's starting at the back of here in the Johnson Center.
Dot in position. Gently tap with your right forefinger on the top of the cardboard. At any time, if you want to remove the point of interest from the screen, point the white dot.
So points of interest are...
Hi, we are standing at the exit of the west side of the Johnson.
And there's a point of interest.
In front of you is the west side perspective of...
And so I told her, make sure that you allow your user to know where they've been. And so every time you use a 360 camera, there's always a dominant point of view. And you can always change it, easily. But you always, when you first go to that scene, you're going to be looking at something. Now, one thing we know about 360.
So the Blip Builder is the browser-based, widget-based builder. It's really just drag and drop and fill out the fields. Command click and say save image as, and then just make sure it goes to the desktop, and so it's easy to find. And then just click save. Okay. So just right click. So, yeah, you can just right click, no keyboard. And then just save it to the table. That way you can go to that folder, or if you can save to the desktop, that's even better. You're going on the left-hand side. You see how there's objects here? So this is more advanced stuff for creating 3D things that will actually come out of the surface if you wanted to do something like that. What's cool is you can also upload. What says upload? There's a thing called FBX files, and those are 3D files that people have created, and there's a gazillion of them. I can click on this. Yeah, I can make it red. I can make it change the opacity. Okay, and I can also up here on these tools is your navigation. So you see where it says 3D? If I click 3D, it just tilts the pane. So now I can kind of make this. I got some controls here. And so I can come over here, and I have this rotation tool. So say I wanted that to rotate up like this, right? And so maybe when they blip me, this thing is actually tilting forward. And I can even move it forward and maybe stack some things like this here in a second. So it fades in. So real easy to create like little tiny behaviors for your blips. This is one of those tools that, it's relatively easy to get started, and it's really about just getting in there and testing some stuff and figuring out what you like to do.